I've said for a couple of years now that Alberta, and particularly Premier Danielle Smith and the oil and gas CEOs, have basically adopted OPEC's oil narrative holus bolus. I mean, just word for word. And I thought, I'm going to do some research on the Saudis' narrative, energy narrative, and then compare it point to point. Let's see how it does actually compare to Alberta's. Well, I came back. I found 5 points that make up their energy narrative, and the first four are just you. When I describe them to you, it's like hearing Danielle Smith at a press conference or making a speech. The fifth one, the fifth one is very interesting and caught my attention. And so stick with me because you're going to want to hear about that. So the first one is oil is here to stay. Global oil demand is going to stay strong out to the mid-century. This comes directly from OPEC's World Oil Outlook 2045 and then last year's 2050. It's all through the modeling, and we've had the Saudi energy minister and others. OPEC Secretary General Haytham El Gai was here this in the spring talking about exactly this thing, and Danielle Smith will talk, and I've got interviews with her where she's talking about, quoting the Saudis basically. So and peak oil, peak demand for oil is not imminent, not anywhere close. In fact, the Saudis ridicule that point, as does Smith, over and over again. Okay, number two, Saudi oil is the world's cleanest and cheapest. How many times have I heard Danielle Smith and her energy minister, Brian Jean, and her environment minister, ironically, Rebecca Schultz, say exactly this thing, and none of it's true. The Saudis produce around $3 to $5 per barrel, and their emissions intensity is around mid 20s of kilogram, uh, 20 kilograms per of CO2 E equivalent per barrel. Well, the oil sands is 66. That's the average, and some of it's a lot higher than that. So not only is Alberta parroting the Saudis, it's not even true. Alberta's, on the break-even side for the oil sands, about $27, which is actually pretty competitive. Let's not belittle that. But at the same time, it's not anywhere near the Saudis. That's for sure. And this one. If the world needs oil for decades, it should be Saudi oil. Again, a common refrain in Alberta. Okay, number three. Energy security requires hydrocarbons. And I've been arguing for a while now, and it just doesn't get traction in Canada, particularly in Alberta. Energy security is being redefined. It used to be, and Alberta still thinks it is, a steady, secure supply of oil and gas at a reasonable cost. And now, as electrification takes place, now it's being redefined as buying elect renewable energy technology once, generating for 25 or 30 years, as long as the technology is still functioning, and then electrifying all of your demand sites, so EVs and heat pumps and so on. And so the Alberta's out of step, and it comes right out of the OPEC energy narrative. Here's another one that I hear all the time. This is number four. Technology will decarbonize oil, not replace it. In fact, 2 years ago, the Smith government put out a report, a plan, it said. It was emissions reduction and responsible oil development plan. It wasn't a plan. It was like a brochure for all the things that they are doing or want to do in the immediate future. And lo and behold, part of this narrative from the Saudis is promoting carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And we get that all the time out of Alberta. And there's some things that are there, but not as maybe obvious to you, which is things like carbon offsetting. But they reframe oil as part of the climate solution, not the problem. Okay, so those are 4 points. It's like listening to Danielle Smith being interviewed. But here's number five. using oil wealth to fund diversification. Now, we've seen in the last year or two the Smith government commit to rebuilding the Alberta Heritage Fund, and that's a scandal on its own. How little money from the oil industry has been saved. It just goes into general revenues, most of it, and gets spent. Um, but the Saudis have a very, very different approach to this, and it's contained in their Vision 2030 strategy. And it has two parts, at least two parts that are relevant here. The first one is renewable energy. Yes, the Saudis are spending hundreds of billions of dollars on renewables. They see not clean energy as a replacement for oil. They see it as additive to oil. They see it's literally a business opportunity for them. So they've spent money. 50% of their electricity is going to come from renewables by 2030, according to the strategy, which is 130 gigawatts of total renewable energy capacity. That's a lot. 58 gigawatts from solar, 40 gigawatts from wind. So they like solar and wind. And $50 billion has been allocated for that. Massive, massive battery energy storage development, $8.5 billion for a green hydrogen plant. I mean, the Saudis are really serious about this, not because they want to replace their oil, but they see down the road, if there's a decline that sets in, they want an alternative. When the golden goose is gone, they need something else to power their economy. Seems like a smart move to me. Then the second part of Vision 2030 that we're interested in is advanced materials and chemicals. And I tell the story often about how 2023, in September, the World Petroleum Congress was in Calgary, and I went into a technical presentation on materials from hydrocarbons. And Dr. Ibrahim Abba, who's the VP of Technology for Saudi Aramco, was speaking, and he said, we're in a materials transition. The population's increasing, the emerging economies, their incomes are going up. We have to figure out not only how we make the materials for them, but it has to be sustainable. We can't just be putting microplastics into the environment all the time. So for the Saudis, this is a big, big part of their energy narrative, their energy plan. So one of the things they did is they have Saudi Aramco, and they have a company called SABIC, SABIC, and they bought 70% of SABIC for $69 billion, and they've kind of integrated Saudi Aramco and SABIC, and SABIC is one of the top 5 chemical producers in the world. And the idea is that you move down the value chain from the upstream, where you're producing the oil, move down the value stream, and you have value chain, sorry, and you have not so much refineries, petrochemicals, and they're working on a process, and probably they'll achieve this because the Chinese already have. So I don't think the technology is a mystery, but it's called crude to chemicals. Or in China, it's often residue for chemicals because they like heavy crude and the bottoms of it, the asphaltenes at the bottom of the barrel. They're going to convert 70 to 80% of a barrel of oil directly into chemicals. No more refining, no longer required. And they see, and not just that, and this is where Dr. Abba comes in, it's advanced materials, because that was the subject of that technical presentation. And Alberta is one of the leading researchers in this. They are literally, as I keep saying, their bitumen beyond combustion program is a year, maybe two, from having a commercial process to produce low-cost carbon fiber. And if they can do automotive grade carbon fiber, the world's their oyster. If they can't, there's still a huge market in adding carbon fiber to building materials, into other things where you need to add strength at a lightweight and a low cost. So it's just a no-brainer. So here's the thing. Everybody in Canada knows that the Smith government has got it in for renewable oil. In 2024, they put a moratorium on wind and solar development. In February, they came out with a new set of rules that basically just kneecapped renewables. And then they've been adding to those regulations and making it even more difficult. And, wind and solar development now has almost come ground to a halt in Alberta. So the Saudis are investing $50 billion into wind and solar by 2030, and the Smith government is making it really difficult with their regulations. And not only that, it's their narrative that you hear it all the time. Danielle Smith will say, "Oh, wind and solar, they're unreliable. They have to be, every megawatt of generation has to be backed up with a megawatt of natural gas generation," none of which is true. But that's the narrative. Why so anti-renewables? Well, grist for another video. And then on the advanced material side, I mentioned the bitumen beyond combustion, but it's not a priority. That's the thing, is that they're not putting billions of dollars, Alberta is not putting billions of dollars into developing an advanced materials manufacturing. It's a little bit here and a little bit there, and it's the typical Canadian, where you sprinkle a little bit of money around to try to get something accomplished, and all you do is you give companies, entrepreneurs, startups, you give them just enough money to get themselves into trouble, and you don't get very many success stories. So that's my point: is Alberta has adopted the Saudi oil narrative, hook, line, and sinker, the whole enchilada, the whole 9 yards, word for word, almost. But curiously, the other parts of the narrative around renewable energy, petrochemical, advanced materials, hydrogen, and so on, a little bit of, you can't say zero, but not nearly to the extent that the Saudis have embraced it, and not in their rhetoric, in their own narrative, and certainly not in the government isn't providing leadership on it, nor is it providing investment capital or trying to get the private sector to invest in it. And here's the irony: Alberta has the best wind and solar resources in the entire country. And it has the second largest petrochemical cluster in North America, next to Texas and Louisiana. So if the Alberta government decided that it wanted to expand renewables, the world's its oyster. It could go to town on that. If it wanted to invest in advanced materials and crude to chemicals and what some of these, like China and Saudi Arabia are doing, it could do that. It has the industrial cluster. It has the expertise. Would have access to capital. I mean, I'm sure the federal government would jump all over this, given Mark Carney's comment, strategy to do big projects of national interest. It's the thinking. That's the problem. Small thinking. Just doubling down on the status quo and hope that's enough, not doing other things to hedge against an electric future where oil demand begins to decline in the 2030s. Small minds.